Good morning, world. How are we today? I wasn't actually going to make a video this morning, but I'll make a quick one now after just listening to the news on my way home. Just in regards to what is going on with Iran and also what is going on with Trump. Quickly, I know, everyone's talking about this and we've already touched on it a bit, but just wanted to add my 2 cents worth. The Poland president or prime minister? President, I think, has come out saying, that it would be the end of the world as we know it if the US, a NATO country, tried to take over the territory of another NATO country. A part of me is like, yes, Trump, what are you doing? But another part of me is like, again with the Monopoly game, I feel that there is a lot of things going on in the world, a lot of moves being made by leaders of the world that appear to be something to us, but really behind closed doors, behind the scenes, there are plans. There are things, happening in a particular order that everybody is aware of that will be taking place. Planned. I don't think that it is necessarily a surprise what happened in Venezuela. I don't think it's necessarily a surprise what's happening with Greenland. I think that everybody is aware that there is a race for rare earth materials. And again, that is part of the power grab. It's all about who can have the most power. And then this whole thing with Iran, I have no doubt in my mind that there were terrorist agitators put in place in the last 3 days of protesting, as the Iranian leader said. He said the first 10 days was all, peaceful protesting about the, cost of living crisis and whatever, which, by the way, wasn't that a result of damage done to their infrastructure by the US? Like a planned attack to destroy their economy and their infrastructure and, cause havoc in the first place. And then the people, they're protesting the consequences of that, but it's not, it's not their government's fault, is it? Then there's protesting. And apparently it was all fine for the first 10 days, but then the last 3 days, it's like become all hostile and aggressive and violent and things like that. And then people are being taken into custody because they're believed to be terrorists. They're like implants. And it's all good and very well for the US to claim things like that, or any other country to claim things like that and say, oh, they're terrorists, that's why we killed them. Oh, they're terrorists, that's why we've locked them up, even without a proper charge or without a proper trial or evidence or anything like that yet, because it's under terrorism laws. We can do what we want under terrorism laws and threats and whatever. But when Iran does it, end of the world. Trump's out here bombing people left, right, and center, killing people, without, did we have a skerrick of evidence that the people he was killing on these boats were actual drug smugglers or whatever? People get killed all the time in the name of war. That's without charge or trial or whatever. There's people all the time killed, and it's claimed that they're a terrorist. That's just the narrative that we're told, and that's what we have to accept. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like, it's so hypocritical. And then they want to paint this whole thing with Iran so that they can, you know, overthrow that country's government and take control of it. It's a agenda, isn't it? What do they want in Iran? Probably something, probably oil or something. You know, like, you always have to look at what is happening behind what they say to us, okay? We're just they view us as like, we're just the dum-dums that they just have to tell some story. And that's the end of it. That's what they're going to push. That's the narrative. That's what we're supposed to believe. And, you know, really, obviously there's other stuff going on behind closed doors or behind the scenes. You know what I mean? Yeah, I mean, isn't it like a easy playbook move to send in people to create a really violent, hostile, protesting thing, spread misinformation, propaganda, blah, 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 undermine the authority of that country, like the government. And then, you know, when all that's going on and there's video footage of, you know, the police or the military of that country trying to get control back of the streets, you know, and it looks very aggressive and things like that, because that's the force that authorities are allowed to have with its people, which, by the way, they're allowed to have that force in America too, aren't they? They're allowed to have that force in Australia too, aren't they? You know, like, I'm sorry, but I've seen many a time police using what seems like incredibly serious, violent force to take down even women, you know, and you know, shooting at crowds and you know, all sorts of what seems very over the top violent treatment by police or military towards the country population, like crowds, you know, protesters and things like that. So, you know, why is it okay in America? Why is it okay in Australia? And then when the police or the military in Iran are trying to get control back of their streets for what could possibly be terrorist, you know, like people who have been planted there to cause all that chaos in the streets and violence and things like that, you know, why is it all of a sudden, oh, let's attack them? Oh, look what they've done. Oh, they even, you know, there was word getting out that there was a 8 p.m. curfew put in place for a short period of time, you know, just to help with maintaining the safety in the cities and whatnot. You know, oh, it's like military. It's just, you know, that's shocking, isn't it, that they would do that? What are you talking about? What are you talking about? Seriously. During COVID, we had curfew for so long that you could not be outside your house after a certain period, a certain time in the evening, you know, and you couldn't leave your house more than 5 kilometers. That's, you know, in Australia, that's like a 5-minute drive. You know, like, it's why is it okay for these rules and these things to be put in place under whatever situation in Australia or America or whatever, but then, you know, it's happening over in Iran and we're all, oh my God, are they really doing that to their people? You know? It reeks to me of a planned takeover of that country, and they're going to put out all this propaganda and we're going to put all this false narrative, and maybe they even really were behind implant people in the crowd that turned the protesting from peaceful to violent and dangerous and whatnot. And you know, I've heard as well that there was like their Supreme Court or whatever judge was like going and speaking to the people who have been imprisoned as a result. you know, to try to get to the bottom of like what they were doing, and you know, who they're working for or who they're associated with or whatever like that. That is the same treatment that a person who is being accused of the same thing in Australia would get, or a person accused of the same thing in America would get. So let's get our brains straight. Let's like have our brains set in reality here, okay, and not get caught up in the language that they use in these news articles and things like that that manipulate you into thinking that they care a lot about people's you know, human rights and correct treatment and all this sort of stuff. You know, Trump, oh, you know, if they put one finger on you, don't worry, we're going to be over there, we're going to come and help you guys, we're going to come and save you people. Do you think Trump really gives a crap about the actual people of Iran? No, he does not. He cares about taking over that country and getting their oil or whatever other agenda he has. That's what it is about. It is not about caring about the people. So everybody just needs to not take the wording and the narrative that gets spread by news media, by, you know, Trump and his people or any other, you know, people who are pushing it. Don't just believe what you're told. You know, it's just like the old, you know, everybody, you know, for generations, it's like, don't trust your government, you know, like that's what people say. And then people get shocked to hear that. You know, people are like, oh, how could you say, oh, don't trust your government, you know? Okay, well, let's look at like history. How many times has there been in various different countries information that comes out later on that proved that countries' government did really wrong by people, whether it was genociding a whole race of people and murdering them and taking them out of their home and taking their land and pillaging them and trying to breed out the black and you know, forced this and forced that and involved in this over here and involved in this over there. You know, don't act so shocked that it's possible that leaders of countries can be involved in nefarious things. Of course they can. Of course they can. You know, and I mean, that's the whole, you know, game, isn't it? That's like back and forth between different political parties as well, is them trying to point at each other of, oh, you've been doing this and you've been doing it. Oh, you should be impeached. Oh, you should, you know, you should have to step down and you should be fired for what you've been doing here. And you know, it goes on and on, doesn't it? You know, so don't be surprised to come to the realization that maybe your government isn't necessarily the most trustworthy. You know, just because they say something doesn't mean you have to believe it. You know, you have to think for yourself. Everybody around the world has to think for themselves. You know? Anyway, short video today. Just wanted to have my 2 cents on that because it just seems like a blip, 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 ongoing, spreading a narrative, spreading storylines. When to me it seems very, very clear, very, very obvious that there are agendas at play here. And no, Trump does not care about the safety and well-being and treatment of the Iranian people. Of course he does not. He barely cares about the safety and treatment of his own people. Okay? I mean, really. Anywho, that's my rant this morning. You all have a good day. Yeah, this was not a planned moment this morning. But yeah, you all have a good day, and I'll see you in another video. Bye.